independent nation. The country had not too many options. It was a poor country with great levels of illiteracy. Our priorities were different. Building a strong India, strong country was the utmost and first priority for the then government. So the decision at the time to remain neutral in this great power game probably could be seen from a sympathetic prism also. But the problem with that approach was that our non-alliance was guided not necessarily by any great ideal, but by our desire that we should not be seen as siding with anybody. There is a difference. There was no greater ambition. The whole urge was very romantic. I won't side with anybody. I am a very neutral person. So the non-alliance was essentially a sort of a reticent behavior of our nation. We emerged on the global arena as a reticent nation, a romantic nation. Our romance with non-alliance did not last long. The Bandung conference where non-alliance was formalized was in 1955. And 1962 we had a bad war with China. Nobody from non-aligned world was there to stand by us. Those who were non-aligned, claiming to be non-aligned, decided to remain non-aligned, even with India. So non-alignment died its own death. Afterwards, we became introverts. We were concerned about our own problems, our own challenges. We focused on our domestic politics largely. Hardly did we play any major role in the global affairs in the last century. The global order that was sought to be built in the decades of the second half of the last century, by the time the 21st century came, that world order started facing certain major challenges. As we entered the 21st century, of course, the bipolar Cold War politics has ended with the collapse of Soviet Union in 1991. But interestingly, although the Americans wanted the world to be unipolar, if you recall Francis Fukuyama, he authored a very interesting article in the Foreign Affairs magazine in 1989. The title was End of History and the Last Man. He said that with the collapse of communism, the history has come to a standstill. Because hereafter, there is only one way left for the mankind, that is the Western way. The world order that they sought to build at the time of the creation of United Nations, etc., the liberal democratic world order shall remain the only way for the mankind. So that's why he said, end of history now. You don't have to think about any other thing. Just singularly focus on this way, take the way forward. But by the dawn of the new century, the Americans also had to realize that however much we may want the world to be unipolar, with America leading the way, multiple powers are rising as poles. These poles are not necessarily always only the nations. Mini laterals are forming up. 10 countries got together and created what is called ASEAN in 1987. Created in 60s, but it became the 10 countries ASEAN alliance in mid 80s. Now ASEAN became a powerful bloc. India tried to create its own small neighborhood alliance called the SAARC, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. It became a small bloc. The countries in Europe, especially Western Europe, got together and created European Union. The African countries came together and created African Union. Countries started growing rich and prosperous and big. And one of the important countries to rise towards the end of the last century was, of course, China. Besides China, countries like Singapore, Korea, Japan emerged as Asian tigers in the last 2 decades of the last century. So by the turn of the new century, the Americans also realized that it is no longer a unipolar world. It has instead become a multipolar world. A world where many poles have emerged. Individual nations as powerful entities, but also small minilaterals as groupings of nations as powerful entities. So the multilateralism has become the new reality of the 21st century. The United Nations and other multilateral institutions that were created for building a new world order had to face with this new situation of multipolarity. Bipolar, unipolar order gave way to multipolarity. But things did not stop there. What happened in 2001 in America, many people probably call it as a terrorist attack, which it was. 9/11 was one of the worst incidents of terror in the entire history of mankind. Just in one attack, one terror attack, so many people dying has not happened anywhere else in the history, anywhere else in the world. But that was not just a terror attack alone. It was a reminder that there emerged forces, there emerged powers that are no longer state powers. The attack on the World Trade Center or Twin Towers in America was not by any nation, any other country, not by any enemy country, but by a terrorist group. Transnational terrorism has become a reality. A few years passed. One Edward Snowden showed up, who stole lot of secret documents, secret mails, etc. from the Pentagon and ran away with them to Russia. And he was supported by a number of groups in the world, human rights groups, other non-governmental organizations, and they conveyed the message that in the 21st century, besides states, there are non-governmental groups which have also become very powerful. Then the Americans confronted with a situation where the President of America was forced to negotiate with companies like Google, companies like Apple, companies like Microsoft, to let them know certain secrets, to let them help the governments in busting, anti-national operations, anti-national activities, because the IT cyberspace has become a big threat to the nations, including America. So when they started negotiating with this big tech, they realized that apart from the states, nations, apart from terrorist groups, apart from NGOs, even big tech corporations also have become an important pillar, important pole, important power in this 21st century new world. The reality of the 21st century world order is, it is not only multipolar, it is heteropolar. States as independent force, but also most powerful NGOs, most powerful individuals. We know sometimes on social media you hear the names of people like, George Soros. Who is he? An individual. Why are nations scared of him? Because he has the power of NGOs. You have transnational terror. You have big tech. You have multinational corporations. Those who have the power to defy sovereign boundaries and sovereign power. So remember, the 21st century is, this world order is shaped by all these new pillars of power. In that sense, it is a heteropolar world order. We as a nation entered into this heteropolar world order. One difference that we have been able to make was, number one, to give up the reticence of the 60s, 50s, 60s and 70s. For any country to emerge as an important player, as a big power, the first thing is that determination to be a big power. You can't just be a romantic power. You can't just be a reticent country and think that people will automatically make you a big power. No. You have to have the determination to become a big power. How China emerged on the global platform as a big power. If you ever read the history, Mao was so very reticent, so very opposed to any engagement of the outside world. So much so that he said, I don't even want semiconductors or transistors from outside. Whatever we make in our own country. We don't want anything from outside. So much reticence. But all that was changed by Deng Xiaoping in 1980s and 1990s. With a single-minded determination that I have to arrive. I have to become a big country. The Chinese leadership played all sorts of dirty tricks in the book, to the extent that in 1998, when the time came for them to enter the World Trade Organization, which was only allowed for countries which have open markets. WTO is a forum of countries with open markets. The Chinese, forget about 1990s, even today they are not an open market. Their market with so many restrictions. Yet, they played a very deceitful role. They told the world that we will abide by all the rules of the game of WTO. Jiang Zemin was the president. Went to the WTO forums, promised, false promises were made. The Americans looked at the lucrative market. They believed that maybe through entry of WTO, we can tame China. Their communism can be tamed. But once they got into WTO in 2001, they started showing their real face. For 10 years, they allowed the multinational corporations in America, in the name of free market, open market, to come in. When they all came in, they closed the doors from behind. Now those companies are struggling to get out. They want to get out, but they cannot get out. The Americans tried their best of decoupling. You know, nowadays they don't talk about decoupling. Because they realize that decoupling is not possible because they were sucked into the Chinese system. Their companies were. The companies are today negotiating Intel is going, IBM is going, telling them that I will give you chip technology, please give me a little more freedom to sell outside. Now the Americans are saying, no, not decoupling, that's not possible. We can't completely decouple. So what we do is de-risking. Where there is a risk, there we will get out, otherwise we will do business. Why I am saying this is, China may not be a good example. But I am saying a country's determination that I want to be big. We lacked it. But fortunately today, especially in the last 10 years, we demonstrated that ambition to grow as an important power. You know, in 2014, when Prime Minister Modi went to the USA, he and President Obama, after their bilateral meeting, released a joint statement. That joint statement has a very interesting sentence. That sentence reads, the Americans acknowledge India's ambition to rise as an influential and responsible global power. India, for the first time, declared that I have an ambition to grow as an influential, but of course responsible global power. Influential is my warning, responsible is my commitment. I won't be like China when I grow. I won't give you any sleepless nights, but I will grow as an important, influential power. We today have that ambition to grow. With that ambition, we are moving in a specific direction. We have a direction today. We are not a pushover anymore. Where we used to play the card of non-alliance and try to insulate ourselves from the big power rivalry. Today, we are not talking about non-alliance. We are talking about strategic autonomy. We are not insulating. We are actually entering into all conflicts, but through the route of strategic autonomy. We are talking to Russia. We are talking to America. We are talking to Iran. We are talking to America. We are engaging with Israel. We are engaging with Palestine. This is called strategic autonomy, dehyphenating the relation. So we are ambitious, we are proactive, we are playing a very active role in the world. That is how nations acquire greatness. We are today developing very strong ties with our neighborhood. We are born into a difficult neighborhood. God created a great India, but gave two neighbors. One is China and one Pakistan. Barabar kar diya. But what can we do? We learned to live with this kind of neighborhood. Today we understood how to deal with China also. On Pakistan तो आप लोग भी PhD कर चुके हैं कैसे deal करना है. Government तो बहुत जानता है how to deal with Pakistan. But we today know how to deal with China also. Earlier, when we had challenges from China, we used to depend on diplomatic communique, diplomatic route. Today, together with proactive diplomacy, we know how to demonstrate strong ground power also. We are of course talking to China diplomatically, but on the ground, we are standing face to face with the Chinese threats. Without begging for support from any other country, we are standing firm on the ground. So we learned to deal with our difficult neighbors, but at the same time, we also started expanding our relationship in our neighborhood. Today, India has emerged as a linchpin in the entire Indo-Pacific region. Everybody wants to court India. We first of all tried with SARC, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. One bad boy is there. He wouldn't listen. Then we decided, okay, SARC can remain in cold storage for some time. Let us develop BIMSTEC. We expanded our daira into BIMSTEC. Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Cooperation, Economic Cooperation. Then we went beyond BIMSTEC in our Act East policy. We reached out to entire ASEAN. When our ties with ASEAN became strong, solid, today we have a Quad. We have expanded our Daira into Pacific also. So we are with ambition, with a kind of clear roadmap, expanding our area of influence, area of operations. We are the singularly powerful entity or nation in the entire Indian Ocean region today. Don't underestimate the power of Indian Ocean. Indian Ocean is the third largest body of water on the earth. It's a region which has 38 countries. In its regional countries are 38. It's the region through which 70% of the world's container trade passes at any given time in history, in contemporary history. Any time you see 70% of the world's trade passes through this Indian Ocean region. We are at the epicenter of that region. And finally today, after expanding our area of operation to all these areas, today we stood up and said, I'm not just that, I am the frontline country of the global south. The global south is the entire southern hemisphere, from Latin America to Africa to entire Asia to Pacific. More than 120 countries form this global south definition. They fall into this definition. Today, India is championing the cause of this global south. In this new world order, which is heteropolar, India has emerged as an important and significant player. We are the voice of the world's most important group of countries. Global South is 80% of the world's population, 40% of the world's GDP. The biggest group, and that is led, or probably India is the voice of that group. So we have arrived here. Just India's future trajectory will be in the direction where the world is multipolar, world is heteropolar. India has to emerge as a strong pole representing a major voice in the global opinion. When India plays that role, India is not only contributing to contemporary world politics, but also contributing to it based on its own age-old wisdom. That's why when we lead G20 also, we are talking about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. These things matter. When we are talking about rebuilding the multilateral institutions, we are talking about our age-old concept of what is the whole world made of, Panchabhutas. The concept of Panchabhutas we are invoking. Why do we need United Nations organization? Not to become a party in Ukraine-Russia war, but to actually lead, create a global governance for the preservation of Panchabhutas. Prithivyapas Tejo Vayu Rakash. Our oceans, our earth, our climate, our energy sources, our space, outer space, these need a different governance, and India is today suggesting to the to the multilateral organizations that we should put in place a different framework for leading global governance. The existing framework is not working. It has become a party to the disputes. Nobody listens. There is an UNCLOS of United Nations. It's a loss on the seas. It delivers a judgment. India obliges the judgment. But China says, get lost, I don't listen to you. When China says that, UN is helpless. It can't do anything. We don't want that kind of a world order, that kind of a multilateralism. So we are saying that multilateralism also should change. But the young researchers should think about when it has to change, what should happen? What kind of multilateral order do we want in 21st century? We have a clear view. We need a multilateral order in which there are no veto powers. There are no countries which are permanent members. Members today don't have any influence, but they have veto power. They can stall anything and everything. We don't want that kind of a multilateralism. We need a multilateralism where in a heteropolar structure, all the heteropolar components have a say. We need to work on those themes today. As India progresses, as India continues to play a greater role, our role should be, our research, our work should be, how can we build a new world order which is going to be guided by India's wisdom. It's our wisdom that should guide. We need to work on those themes. So the only red line in this is, probably two red lines are what I mentioned close. But red line number one is, if you don't do it, somebody else will do it. There is bound to be a new world order shaping up now, especially post-COVID. The kind of situation that has emerged, this heteropolarity, the climate challenges, the other problems, health challenge, it's bound to lead to a new world order. But if we don't guide that world order, China will do. China wants to create an authoritarian world order. It is enticing countries with its money, with its other influences. Even the Buddhist world it is trying to influence using Buddhism or using its money. So, if we don't do it, if we remain reticent, if we remain lethargic, or if we remain romantic, somebody else will do it. Our Indians का दूसरा एक habit है. We are very fond of history. In Ramayana, how great our statecraft was. In Mahabharata, how people came from all over the world to fight the war. We read all that history. But what about tomorrow? Do you also have some ideas for tomorrow? We need to today use our great ancient wisdom to build the roadmap for the future of the mankind, not just India, to the mankind. One red line is that. Second most important red line is, for this to be realized, you need a stable India, a united India, a strong India led by a leader with a vision. Rest you understand, with these two red lines in mind, we need to really think about the new world order that will be shaping up in the 21st century and in which India's role, how it should be reimagined. I once again compliment all the authors who have contributed to the articles, although I haven't read it. I will definitely read, it's my area of interest, but definitely I will read and give my views to both the editors, but I compliment the authors and also the editors.